There was an odd silence as night came. Everyone was tired and worn out, but they had stuffed themselves with as much food as they could after so long without it. Anjo had been against it till Cheong-san had said that it was better to have everyone's strength up in case they had to leave. He wanted everyone to rest because he knew that sooner rather than later they would need to leave the school, especially with Gwenom now hunting them. Cheong-san and Suhyuk had voted on who was going to take first watch because with just the zombies maybe they could sleep, but now the possibility of Gwenom letting them in was high. Namra was still getting used to her new overpowered senses. She could already tell who people were just by their scent. But what now particularly interested her as they stayed in this room bored out of their minds, was just how had those two happened. It didn't make any logical sense. Anjo had just been staring daggers at Na-Yeon since she had seen her holding his hand, and when he had kissed her head she had been at a loss of words. Because how could he? She literally killed his best friend and he is acting as if nothing happened. Na-Yeon had kept herself out of sight, mostly staying in the back room and sitting with Cheong-san when she came out. But she had been with him most of the time, just holding his hand. He looked to be in deep thought. She could only guess, thinking of a plan on how to get them all out of here. She was glad that the situation with Namra had ended with trouble, as she didn't think she would want Cheong-san wallowing in the guilt she still felt for Jae-young-soo's death. She could feel Anjo's eyes on her, and the girl wasn't even trying to be subtle, and the expression on her face just promised pain. Anjo got up and headed for the two. Enough was enough. People had pretended that there was nothing wrong with this just because they got some food and a new place to stay, but she wasn't that easily deceived. "What's going on?" she asked, momentarily glancing at their grasped hands. Na-Yeon wanted to let go as soon as she saw where the girl's eyes had focused, but Cheong-san held firm, which surprised her. "Nothing is going on, I'm just thinking of a plan on how to get us out of here," he said, not meeting her eyes, but they both knew she wouldn't be as easily satisfied with that answer. "You know damn well that's not what I meant," she said, raising her voice slightly, causing some groans and roars to come from the zombies in the hallway. "Can you at least be quiet with your couples?" Girl Woo Jin said dismissively, receiving cold glares from the both of them as he quickly went to looking back out the window. Anjo looked back at Cheong-san. "You know you can't do that with her, especially after everything she did." How was he supposed to reply to that? He knew he had no answer for it, especially to someone that had known him so long. "She's a murderer, she killed Jae-young-soo, but here you are kissing on her. Did he mean nothing to you?" That line seemed to strike him hard. He hadn't really thought about what to do about the whole thing of her and Jae-young-soo. She had of course asked him to forget it for a moment, to explore whatever the two of them were feeling, because they would never be a time it would be okay. He could feel Na-Yeon still trying to break her hand away from his hold, and he held her firm still, but he didn't know why. She was looking down and away from him, not wanting to meet his eyes. He could only guess that she could probably morph back into the shell she was when he found her, but part of him didn't want to see that. Maybe he was letting his hormones do the talking more than anything, but it's what he wanted. "It just happened," he said, and the audible scoff she gave was enough of an answer on how she the reply. "Just happened, but you know what else just happened? Jae-young-soo's murder just happened. Maybe you didn't care about him as much you said you did." A loud slap echoed around the room as everyone turned to face the three. Anjo was holding her cheek, facing away, shocked by what had just happened as Na-Yeon stood there holding out her hand. The silence was deafening. "You're right, I am a murderer, and if this ever ends I will give myself up for it. But you don't get to put all of that on Cheong-san," Na-Yeon said with her head still hung low as she placed her hands on her sides. "I get it, I know who I am, I know what you think of me, all of you, she said as she looked around the room at all the others that started looking away as her gaze met them except Namra. You probably think I'm taking advantage of Cheong-san, but that's not it. She could feel the trail of tears on her face, but she pushed through. I know that Cheong-san came for me even if I don't deserve it. That much was obvious when no one else came with him to help me. If I were you, I wouldn't help me either, but don't ever put any of this on Cheong-san. Most of you wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for him. Her voice was shaky with each line as she felt that this courage was ever so fragile, but she needed them to know that they could hate her and not Cheong-san. I'm the monster, not Cheong-san, she said as she turned and left, headed into the back room. Cheong-san tried to go after her, but she shrugged him off as she entered the room and closed the door. They heard the click of the lock as the room was once again quiet. Na-Yeon slid down the wall covering he mouthed as she silently sobbed. She knew it was going to be like this or worse. At least they hadn't thrown her out to the zombies. She would have doubted that they could, but she could still remember the look of disgust and hate on their faces. Especially that of Cheong-san. His face now stood out more than it did before, but the image and the words never matched in her dreams and daydreams. A face filled with hate and disgust, but whispering sweet nothing to soothe her nerves. The same she had heard when they slept together. It was all confusing. Cheong-san's eyes met Shenjo and she was surprised that he was angry, but not at Na-Yeon, at her. Why did you have to do that? I know what happened. I never forgot what happened. I think about it all the time in the back of my mind. But we need to get out of here soon. Together. Shenjo was about to interrupt, but he held his hand up. I know what you're going to say, but it just happened. I don't understand it either. He knew that he had always had feelings like these that he wanted to express with someone, and for a long time he thought that it might have been Shenjo, but he knew now that he was going to keep waiting till the day they probably died for her to notice him. After all, he was a nobody. He had dived in head first with Na-Yeon because she made sense in the way she was speaking. They had already lost a large part of their small group, and a part of him knew they were still going to lose more before whatever fate had planned met them. With her, he had felt that spark, and together they had stoked those flames because he knew what else did he have to lose. This was not something that he wanted to regret if he lived through this, always thinking what if. He would rather go down with somewhat of a happy demeanor. His mother always told him to not hold grudges before eating her chicken, as that would sour it. That brought a small smile to his face as he looked up at Shenjo still holding her cheek, and he ruffled her hair. You're still my best friend. Shenjo felt like she had been kicked in the chest by that statement as he said to her with a smile before turning and heading to the storeroom. She watched him as he knocked on the door, calling softly for Na-Yeon to open up. It took a while, but the girl eventually opened the door. She couldn't see Na-Yeon properly, but saw the worried look on Cheong-san's face, which just hurt more. Cheong-san, can we go to sleep? Na-Yeon asked shyly. He could already see that she had been crying, but decided not to ask about it now, best to forget it for a while. He stepped into the back room to see that their makeshift bed was still there in one piece. He thought it would have been destroyed when they started handing out the blankets. He felt the door shut behind him, and then Na-Yeon's small and fragile arms wrapped around his waist from behind as she buried her face into his back. He held her hands in his own as he finally relaxed for the first time today. Cheong-san, you. Shush, he said, stopping. It's okay, he said, trying his best to ease her nerves. Let's just get some sleep, okay? He felt her nod into his back before she let go and went sleep on their bed. He got in after her, and he could see she was keeping some distance away, but he wasn't going to let this happen after how close they were in the past few days. He reached out an arm, which surprised her as she let out a small smile as she quickly settled beside him, ducking into his neck again. He kissed her head, then her cheek, feeling her sigh in his neck again. I hate being the monster, she said, tightly clutching him. I wish I could go back all the time. He just held her tightly as she let out a shudder. No one deserved what I did to him, and you know I would be fine if you were using me to get back at me for him. He silenced her rabblings with a kiss and looked her straight in the eyes. I would never do that even to me? You have every right to. But he just shook his head as he rubbed her back. Then I would be no better. I wouldn't be able to see the good in you or anyone else. Na-Yeon just remained silent, thinking about what he was saying. So don't think you can only be a monster. No, I feel that there's more to you. And after this is all over, I'm going to take you out to chicken at the restaurant, he said, causing her to let out a giggle. If that's your idea of a date, then you have some work to do. Not that I am much better. I've never been on one myself. She met his eyes and slinked down to his shoulder again. Then that's another first for us, he said as they shared a laugh. Then he felt her give a small peck to his neck, which then became 2 and then 3, and he knew where this was going.